Welcome to the MX podcast featuring Dan Roberts.
Hello, thanks for tuning in. Episode number 14 of the MX podcast. And today I'm joined by a wonderful guest, Miss Rebecca Pearson. She's a model, a writer, and just a lovely human being. Today we talk about the fashion industry and how to navigate through that. We talk about the life of a model. We talk about the highs and lows. We talk about social media. We talk about bookers and agents and relationship you can foster with those guys. We talk about music. We talk about fashion, all kinds of stuff. I think if you're a model, you'll particularly enjoy today's episode. I think if you are involved in the fashion industry, you'll get a lot from this episode. And I think if you're a human being, you'll enjoy the episode because Rebecca is just a lovely person and she has a very professional and kind take on how to deal with life. So yeah, let's get on with it, shall we? So how are you getting on anyway?
Okay. Well, I don't even want to say it's a funny time. We all know that, but I'm taking it day by day. So some weeks I get a fair amount of work. I have a good week of, say, dance classes, and another couple of weeks I might get no work, no castings, and then I'm thinking this is the end. And there's this whole backdrop as well of just uncertainty and health worries and worries about your family. But then I will also catch myself having like a really fun hyper day or a day where I'm really proud of getting a shoot. And it's just, I wouldn't exactly say it's a roller coaster. I just feel like it's very much more of a minute by minute existence at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting you to say, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? But yeah.
Sorry, how are you?
No, you're right though. It's so hard because yes, in this sort of society, it is up and down, and obviously it's so confusing right now, but also people in different industries are affected different ways. I mean, modeling is self-employed, so people who are self-employed are having even tougher time because it's not like before the pandemic, the modeling lifestyle was like completely consistent income and consistent booking. So it's got to be tough.
Yeah, and at the same time, I've had years like this where there wasn't a pandemic in the background, you know, where I had busy weeks and really dead fortnights, etc. I've probably work-wise, I've had worse years.
Yeah.
It's strange for freelancers because in some ways we're perfectly primed for this.
Yeah, in a way that we're used to sort of waking up with no income, but it's still tough though. Now, you kind of touched on something I want to talk about first. Like, obviously, I work in the industry on the other side from what you do, but I know a lot of models, and not many last that long. And you've lasted a long time. You started at 15, right? You got scouted outside Topshop, I seem to remember.
And not just the one time. I honestly would just go up because I'd go to Camden to get like my grungy clothes, and then I'd sneak into Topshop to get my sort of my little crop tops and stuff, because it was like 2000, 2001. That was the fashion then, which has now come back in, making me feel very old. And I got scouted first by Models One, then a few more agencies, and I would go into the agency and they'd say, oh, actually, you're not for us. And it was so horrible because it was like, you scouted me. I'm just this fussy teenager from Lower Morden. You've put this dream inside my head and now you've dashed it. It's horrible. And then by the time I got scouted by Premier, who, for anyone who doesn't know, are one of the really big agencies, just like Models One, I think it was so good that I'd been scouted and rejected because they were really keen. And I was quite sort of not returning their calls. I played it a little bit cool just because I thought I don't want to go through that again. But of course, that's catnip to agencies. They love the chase and they love the excitement, but it was kind of the perfect prep for modeling, all that rejection before I'd even started.
I'd love to talk about the advice you give to models and other things, but I think to give it context, can we talk a little bit about your journey?
I do think being scouted was the best thing that ever happened to me. At school, I was quite shy in a way, and I felt a bit different. And then when I got scouted, I really enjoyed it. I went on shoots. I didn't feel shy and awkward, and I felt I was quite a natural at it, which is amazing considering that I was honestly this very awkward sort of, I had really bad acne, my braces had just come off, but I just really felt at home on shoots. But I stayed at school, it was a decision, and that did mean that you make a lot of sacrifices, you know, oh, babe, can you run for this casting for Vogue? They want to look at you for Russian Vogue or for the cover of this mag. And it's like, I've got double sociology and like I've got coursework due in tomorrow, and you just have to make that call. And I guess because I came from quite a solid family where education was quite important, my mum's a teacher, I just prioritized school. So I think that was really good because it gave me a really solid grounding. I didn't get sent off to like Paris, Milan and New York when I was a teenager and go down kind of, I think that's when people can go down some quite tricky paths. Then I had 2 gap years where I modeled, and I pretty much did commercial. I didn't do that much editorial, which at the time really hurt my ego. I wanted to be doing Vogues and The Face and ID, but now I look back, I saved in that 2 years what put me through uni and put a deposit on the flat I own. But then after university, that's when Select, who I'd been at for a while, they're another one of the really, really huge agencies. They dropped me. It was really hard for my self-esteem.
Did you sense it coming?
No, because I was still, I didn't feel confident anymore. And I look back now and I realize I didn't evolve as a model. I kind of had the same look. I did the same sort of modeling. But I didn't see it coming because I was still getting pretty decent commercial work in my school holidays or my uni holidays. And the way that it happened as well, I rang them up and I was like, oh, I'm around now, I can do castings. And my booker said, oh, babe, been meaning to call you. We actually can't represent you anymore. We feel like we've taken you as far as it can go. Like, I still remember the conversation so much. And I also remember like the boyfriend I had at the time cheated on me and dumped me, I think just the week after. And honestly, the pain of Select dropping me was so much bigger. That guy, I like had a little cry and then was over it. That was huge because I had been scouted at 16 and always been quite popular, always worked quite well. And then it was so weird at the age of 23 to feel washed up and frumpy and lost. And I joined an agency called First, who were, in comparison to like Premiere, Model 1, Select, were teeny tiny. And I joined them because I felt safer because they wanted me. And I did work, but I didn't work that well. And it was a very different payment system, let's say, to, I don't want to get sued, but it was not like it was at Select. But then I just drifted along doing okay. But I joined Bookings, who are now defunct. They ended over COVID. They closed down. They'd been around since the 70s. They're a really solid commercial agency. So as you can see, like everyone's feeling the effects quite close to home. But I spent the latter years of my 20s working on things like writing, and I started my blog, Model Typeface. I wrote for places like The Guardian and The Telegraph, and I went on the news talking about model rights. And the more I developed passions outside of modeling, the better my modeling career kind of became, because also it wasn't my sole focus. Like, I lost that desperation. And actually, since my 30s, in many ways it's blossomed, because I started dance classes, which anyone who follows me on Instagram will know, and I chopped my hair off, I got a bob. And on shoots, I don't turn up thinking, I'm not cool anymore, like my hips are too big, I'm not a Select anymore. I turn up and I just have way more confidence, I'd say.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, because it becomes more playful. The same is true of athletes, actually. A lot of athletes, their dream is to be like a tennis player or footballer. But then, let's say you're a tennis player, you get to the ATP tour. Suddenly, if you don't get that serve in, you can't pay your mortgage, you lose your sponsor. So it stops becoming a playful, living your passion. It becomes like stressful. So modeling, if you don't get this job, you're going to get dropped and you can't pay rent. You can't really just enjoy yourself. It takes like a crazy monk-like Zen attitude to do that. So I think having things, hobbies and things outside of modeling really helps. And the sort of many models I work with, always have a little thing on the side, be it a hobby or a little side hustle. And I think it's so important for just for mental health, you know?
Yeah, it's so hard though, because I trained in beauty last year, which I'm so glad I did, but I had to invest money and time into that. And it was like 6 weekends. It was 6 bank holiday weekends that I did all the training in. And I still lost out on about 6 grand of work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with modeling. Like, I haven't had a shoot in the last 2.5 weeks. But the moment I think, right, I'm going to plan my weeks around modeling, and I'm going to commit to these non-modelly jobs, that's when you get, babe, there's this option. I know you've booked out. It's really tough to properly, truly commit yourself to something outside of modeling. And I know you train a lot of actors.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah, of course. I think it's the thing. Like, from the outside, it feels so much fun and glamorous, and there's a lot of fun stuff about modeling. But just, I think a lot of models don't necessarily realize they're signing up to be a self-employed business, you know, as opposed to just being a model. And you have to think about all those side of things as well. So when you started modeling, were you pretty savvy in terms of what's going on, or did you make a load of mistakes? What?
I remember going to my first casting, and they throw these terms around. I didn't know what casting was. And I remember what I did. It was in the agency, and it was with this photographer, and I just sat on the sofa next to him, and other models were coming in and doing their castings, and I was just like chatting. I didn't go in, show my portfolio and leave, which is what you're meant to do. I didn't know what go fees were, and I also wasn't prepared for the level of BS in this industry. So I had a booker called Curtis who would go, oh my God, Calvin Klein are ringing from New York. They love you. And he'd say, oh, Russian Vogue have rung. They love you. They really want to book you. So then I tell people, oh, I'm shooting for Russian Vogue. And then he'd ring up and go, why are you telling people that you're working for Russian Vogue? And it was because I was this 16-year-old from the suburbs who had no idea about the fashion industry, who was being told by someone that Russian Vogue loves them. I learned as I went along, as all models do, which is why I started my website, because there are so many pitfalls. And my friend Leanne Maskell, who wrote the Model Manifesto, she writes a lot about the legal pitfalls. But there's also just so many practical things, like knowing the terminology, which you can read in her book or on my website. But you're just thrown in at the deep end, and it's sink or swim. And as you can probably gather, I have a really solid home life. So I would go home at the end of the day to my parents instead of a model apartment, and there would be a shepherd's pie instead of like empty cupboards and no idea of how to cook.
Yeah.
So I had like this normalcy to come back to, but a lot of models don't, and I think they just get lost.
No, I think a lot of the ones I work with who are young try and sort of create normalcy. I think when your life is so wild on one part, like your career is wild, you have to have a forced boring side. Otherwise, you just go off the rails. You know? Yeah,
but what 16-year-old wants to be boring? I mean, maybe people are a bit better now, and obviously, routine. I imagine you're a really good influence. Routine.
Yes, that's why, like, you know, with exercise, which is my angle, it's like, let's try doing 20 minutes every morning when you wake up. Because if you're single and you don't know where you're living in different countries and you don't know when your next paycheck is, everything is so up there. So just having the same thing of waking up at the same time, like when you're not working, wake up at the same time, have breakfast, have a walk or a run, that makes it feel a little bit more grounding. Otherwise, you're just going to be all over the place.
Yeah, totally. I think I don't know what it would be like starting now, because obviously I started in 2001. So I had probably a Nokia 3210. And only a few more years before I started, models used to have to ring the agency from a payphone 3 to 4 times a day to check if there were more castings. I was going around town with an A to Z trying to find these places. And honestly, London was so much more, I mean, I'm not saying it's not dangerous now, but like East London, my goodness, 15 years ago, I was going up after school. It would be like dark and winter with a whole bag full of textbooks and then my portfolio, trying to navigate sort of Hackney Wick. It was a different time, but at the same time, I don't know whether social media creates more of a community, or it gives people even less escape from the pressures of modeling. Like, you can't turn off.
It's hard to. There's been so many changes in not just modeling, but in society in the last 15 years, and the model industry has changed as well. So it's. I mean, how have you found the modeling industry change since you started? What ways have you seen it evolve or decline, or however you think about it?
Well, firstly, print. So I used to model for loads of magazines, and magazines don't exist anymore. I used to model for film. So you would shoot with a film camera, you would wait for ages to see how the pictures came out. There was like an air of excitement, whereas now things are shot on digital. So you can see behind the photographer's head how you're looking, which is really helpful, but I guess sometimes there's a bit less magic. There's way fewer magazines because everything's online. Econ didn't exist. If people listening can imagine that, it was catalogs that came through your letterbox. And that was like the job everyone hoped to get once they were a little bit older. Sadly, As soon as I got older, it was like £180 and people chop off your head and you have to do like 80 outfits. There was no Instagram, there was no social media. And in some ways, it's better now because you can see with things like the hashtag "my job should not include abuse." Mm-hmm. People are talking about abuse from within the industry and various things that are unfair. Whereas before it used to be sort of ex-models talking about it. That's why when I started Model Typeface, there wasn't that many people speaking about it from within the industry still working. What else? Budget. Oh my God. The amount of money you would get for a commercial. Like, I did a commercial for a yogurt company, and honestly, add a couple of zeros if I'd done that in 2001. There are way more agencies now. Like, there was the 4 big ones, then there was about 5 or 6 medium ones, and then there was a smattering of quite small agencies. And now there are so many agencies in London, so there's way more models as well. And when I say standards, I don't mean standards have dropped, but just like the standards are far less strict. So you had to be minimum 5'8".
Yeah.
You had to kind of be 32, 24, 35. And if you're a commercial model, your measurements were 33, 25, 36. Whereas now there's this whole spectrum, because there's the Victoria's Secret, mega strict high fashion shows that still kind of exist, but now people can be all kinds of shapes, sizes and heights. There's like
look at Victoria's,
a broadening.
How they've dropped down, and now Fenty Beauty is like,
yeah.
So things are changing quite rapidly in terms of different shapes and sizes.
Absolutely, and I think it's great. Like, I look at Fenty Beauty and I just think fabulous. That is how it should be. It's just that is a very definite change for anyone who started when I started.
Yeah.
It's like a very clear shift, but it was time for that shift to happen.
So how do you feel about the changing things? Because morally, it's nice to be more inclusive, but you are tall and slim. You are traditional model looking. So how has that affected your career? The fact it's become more open, do you think?
It's that thing about privilege, where if you want to support change, you have to accept that you might lose some of your privilege. And I feel like 20 years, put myself through uni, bought a flat, like, I have had my fair share of privilege from being tall, slim, brunette and white.
Yeah.
And when I see people being represented more broadly, I just think that can only be a good thing. And I did start Model Typeface because I did feminism. I studied a feminism module at university.
What was your degree?
Oh, I did a sociology degree.
Okay.
At Bristol Uni. And I was like, oh God, this is all so true. And I became really like passionately feminist. Like, really, I had some years of serious anger. But then I had this whole thing in my head of like, I'm a massive hypocrite. Like, I can't be a model and be a
feminist while being a model.
Exactly. So I also felt like, but I also really love modeling. I don't want to quit. but I do feel like with what I've done and the writing I've done and like the communities I've helped build, and I definitely have I haven't provided support for a huge amount of people, but I definitely know I have made a difference to people's lives. And so it was kind of it was a bit of a way of navigating through my rampant feminism and then the fact that I was like objectifying myself and perhaps sometimes selling clothes for making other people feel a bit bad, which is in some ways how modeling can work.
I mean, it is so tricky. And also, even just like feminism, it's not like there's one definition of feminism. Like a modern version of feminism 20 years ago, feminists would be aghast about what modern feminist is like. It goes through different waves. So it's a very tricky one. And when we try and talk about it, particularly on social media, I mean, I can't talk about it because I'm a guy, so I've got no right to talk about it. But if a girl talks about it, it has to be dumbed down to explain quickly in 30 seconds. And you can't. There's such nuanced, complex topics about identity and stuff. So it's you have to be very careful about how you come across. Do you know what I mean? When you start labeling yourself in that way. So that leads me on to social media. So I know a lot of agents I know are kind of micromanaging their clients in terms of how they should post on social media and their personal brand. What's been your experience of agents or managers advising you about that, if any? And how have you managed to, do you think it's important or not really?
It's so important, but it is really frustrating. I got Instagram, my agent told me that you really have to get it.
Yeah.
So I did, and I saw my friends building their Instagrams, and I just stayed on having 157 followers for so long. And like really, if I look back at what I used to post, it was like me on a Greek island, and where other people would have like them in a bikini doing the peace sign. It was like me stroking mangy street cats. They're like really badly taken pictures. And my following is still at 7,000, and I've been on it probably 7 years. So it grows really slowly, and 100% I miss out on work because I don't have that following. And every now and then I think I could just buy 10,000. I could buy 50,000. I probably, even though people would see like, but she doesn't get many likes for that following, you probably still will get the jobs because people can see the figures sometimes.
Yeah.
But I just can't do that. I think my age sometimes makes me a little bit removed from it because I didn't grow up with smartphones. But at the same time, sometimes I will get so frustrated about it. I don't know how, I'm probably not expressing myself clearly because it's important to me. I spend a lot of time on it. And I also feel like I have built up quite an authentic presence because like I share my dance journey and I talk about just whatever I'm thinking, and
it's real. I mean, you're
not very curated.
But I shouldn't be I think it's great, but a middle-aged guy in his 40s shouldn't be your audience. It should be younger models and agents if you want to focus on career. But then you'll turn into a fucking idiot. If you know what I mean? If you just post pictures of you in a bikini and looking like sexy all the time, that will turn off people who like you as who you are for your brain. So
no, but it's true because sometimes I do, like I'll do a pole dance class or I'll do a sexy class, or sometimes I might wear a bikini and I lose so many followers whenever I look sexy. And I always think it's because it's like if you saw your sister look sexy or something. I think people don't like that very much. But I find the whole Instagram thing with modeling, I find it really annoys me because the pressure on people to grow their Instagram is immense. But actually, the algorithm and the way that Instagram is a really commercial enterprise and stuff, that odds are often stacked against like growing your Instagram in a way that is healthy with how you use your time and your energy. And I just see it damaging a lot of people.
I really don't think it's possible. I think you can grow it, but you have to be willing to take the sacrifice. And there's certain things you can do. You can be highly controversial. You can like talk about your body a lot, show your body a lot. You can, be outspoken. There's certain things, be particularly woke and very activist. There's things which we know will get lots of likes, as it were. But that's not necessarily good for our mental health because it turns you into like a caricature of yourself. It's not real.
And just the time you can spend on it. And sometimes the way I think about things is I'm going to be dead one day. And so I don't want to, or like on my deathbed, I don't want to look back and think like I dedicated this many hours to growing my following on Instagram in my 20s and 30s, when who knows if Instagram will even be around. Like, I know that sounds like quite a dark way of looking at it, but it's sometimes quite good to get a bit of distance, because I've been deleting Instagram at the weekend and I just realized how many times I reach for my phone. And I don't know how many hours I spend on it in the day really, but it must be so much time. And Instagram can be really fun, and it's a way I connect to people. It's basically how we connected. I feel like I know you from Instagram.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just sometimes this distraction tool. You're not just losing out on work because of Instagram, it's because the industry has changed, but it's like something we can pin a lot onto it. And I think we can pin a lot of our anxious tendencies or our depressive tendencies or our tendencies towards comparing ourselves unfavorably towards others. And it's just yet another tool to do that to ourselves. And I do understand why agencies put pressure on models, because they see how much money they could make. But it's really hard to build your Instagram, and you need to also live your life and develop passions outside of it, because
your priority. If you want to grow, it has to be the number one thing. And that's and I think the problem is as well, Rebecca, like there are people who've done really well from growing their Instagram, and you can see they're making more money and doing well. We don't see the ones who've tried really hard to grow it and they've got mental health problems and they're not getting more work. We only see the success stories. So it's out there for everyone to see and think, hey, we can strive towards it. And it's it's just so tricky. It's so tricky. I think everyone though, not just in the world of modeling, I think everyone has to negotiate and figure out a healthy relationship with technology and social media, because it's affecting all of us. It's not just like self-employed brands which are on Instagram. Everyone's on it.
I do really recommend deleting it for the weekend, because I don't know about you and I don't know about others, but there's times I thought, right, I'm going to be strict and only have the app on my phone between the hours of this time and this time, or I'm going to switch it off at 9. I just don't stick to that.
No, I do the same as you. I delete it. I've got no self-control.
Yeah, none. But the weekend, like you don't miss out on too much.
Yeah.
It's just 2 days, and then you can do your Monday to Friday 9 to 5 Instagramming, but just having that little break from it is actually really beneficial.
I find myself like I have a day where I'm posting stories, and then the next day I just do nothing because I'm kind of fatigued from like sharing too much. And I also have to watch myself, like, because I know certain posts will do well. I did a post yesterday, and like by far my most popular post by a million miles, and I knew exactly why, because someone famous was doing an exercise and they tagged me in, and like loads of people. I got 100 new followers, and loads of people shared it, and part of me was like, oh, that's nice. And I was like, no, you fool, it's not nice at all. So I made sure my next post was something which everyone wouldn't like, just to make sure that I don't get addicted to it, because I'm like everyone else. Even though I can see what's happening, I'm still easily led, and we all are, you know. So
also because it's like positive feedback for our businesses. It's like, oh, I've got all these followers, that might help with a shoot, or that might be new clients for you. And it probably isn't. Or it might be for you, but for me, it's not like the difference between a job and not getting a job, especially in my area of modeling. So I'm trying to have some distance, because I definitely did have a couple of desperate years, not where I feel like my posting was outside of what I'm comfortable with, but just where I was so frustrated with how slow it was. And I can't do anything other than be myself on it.
The thing is, though, I mean, originally I was asking about personal branding. I mean, we live in a world now where we do have to care about that kind of stuff if you're self-employed, and having lots of followers is one way of branding yourself, but also having less followers and being really authentic and really believable is also part of them, you know, branding yourself. So when people look at your Instagram, it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear if you spend like half an hour sort of stalking you, it's pretty consistent. Even like I was watching a BBC News interview with you 5 years ago, sharing advice to the news anchor about BMIs and the whole controversy. And it's like, it's what you would say now. You're very consistent. So it doesn't sound like you're just saying things just because it's popular, which a lot of people...
for ages, you are right in that, like for ages, I was thinking, right, I should have a better looking Instagram. I'm going to do highlights. And so I put off doing highlights for ages. But I was like, I'll have a modeling one, I'll have a dance one, it will look really pro. And then somehow it's just become like my garden planter, flowers.
A mixture of
And
like
it's like, I
gardening
can't
and
help it.
cats and like sexy dancing. It's brilliant.
Thank you. But I do hope people listening do have a little think about, is how I use this healthy to me? Because take away your career, take away everything, like your mental health and your physical health is the most important thing in your career, whatever career it is. But modeling, you need to turn up on that shoot and be present. You need to have energy. You need to be able to connect with people. And if you're in this hole of anxiety because you're not Insta famous, or you're worried people won't like you, or you're the lesser choice because you don't have this kind of presence online, it's not as good as if you have a fewer followers, but you turn up and you're great to work with, and you're healthy and you're happy within yourself.
Great advice. Very wise.
Thanks. I'm telling myself.
That leads me on to something else, actually. What advice, let's say for young models listening, what advice would you give to actually be, I guess, professional on a shoot? Because it's like I said, you're not really taught this. You have to kind of learn the hard way. You've learned. So what do you recommend models should do when they're new in their career, when they're actually on set?
Yeah. So number one, I always think it's funny that the main things models have to do is be clean, be on time. And it's amazing how a lot of people do turn up with, they're not wearing nude coloured underwear, or they've been out the night before, or they're late. And really, this job is, for 20 years I've done this job, and it's 20 years of first impressions. That's all you get. You don't get to work in an office and have an off day. So look after yourself, sleep, not drinking the night before a shoot, learning how to, like, following methodology X, for example, and learning how to look after yourself in a really healthy way, like good nutrition, the right workout, the right kind of levels of meditation and rest. And then try and stay off your phone as much as possible. We all do it, especially when there's lots of sitting around in the beginning, but being present and talking to people and looking them in the eye, they remember you so much more. And then really ask them about the job you're doing. No matter what job it is, ask them about, like, oh, what are we shooting today? What kind of things are you looking from me? It's a tiny thing, but it really impresses them, because that's what it would be like in the office when they were in their meetings and talking about, like, the shoot and what they needed and what, the market research showed. And then keep your energy up. So you need to eat properly, you need to stay hydrated. And makeup artists are often really good for saying, like, or if you tell them, like, oh, I've got a bit of period pain, or oh, I'm really thirsty, I'm sure that they're the ones who will look out for you. And then, just keep asking questions and having feedback and showing an interest. I look at the pictures and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy with these, or these look really great, or is there anything more you need? Like, just tiny little thing. I'm, not constantly, but just showing that you care about your job, you care about the outcome, and these people's jobs are on the line and stuff. Not on the line, but it's really important to them that the finished product is right and performs well. So just being engaged, being energetic, being kind, and being interested in the people around you.
It's good advice for life as well.
Yeah, definitely. But when you're 16, you've mainly been at school.
Yeah.
It's mad. Like, it's such an adult industry. So even though that might seem like obvious advice, it's very easy to be kind of overwhelmed, or be quiet, or be thinking, like, I've never hung out with people like this before. Like, I was seriously from the suburbs and had never met people from all around the world, of all kind of
it's also so hard,
people.
At that age, to get the balance between having confidence to be the star of a shoot, but also having humility and grounding to be grateful and be kind. I mean, it's most people full stop find that hard to get that balance. Normally when we hit our 30s, we tend to get it right. But when we're 15, 16, who gets that right?
No. I would always say, like, this came naturally to me, I guess, because I was just like that. So I was just 16, but I've always made friends with the studio assistant, the photographer's assistant, like the interns and the stylist assistants, as well as the people who are the big players on a shoot, because they're the people who will actually get you a cup of tea if you're really cold, or look out for you a bit, because they're really important on a shoot. They're more, a lot of these people are more important than me, because I can be replaced really easily, but like the production assistant has all of the numbers in the emails and knows where everyone should be on a commercial. So I'm not saying like you need to make lifelong friends with everyone, but just chat to everyone, be engaged with everyone, have humility to know that every single person on the shoot is important.
Yeah, I think it makes good business sense too, though. I think I told you this when I was on your and Leanne's podcast. That when I was living in Brazil, living in Rio, the agency I was working for as their trainer, they were working with Giselle, and she was big in Brazil. Well, she's obviously quite famous model, but at the time in Brazil, she was quite a big deal. And classically, there's a lot more beautiful models out there than Giselle, but she was the highest earner by a mile. And her thing was why she was so I guess popular is because all the makeup artists, all the photographers, everyone loved her. Like everyone at different levels loved her. It wasn't just the agent. She always gave time to all the kind of, not little people, you know what I mean? Everyone in the set, like you were saying, she was very famous for being fun and nice and gracious on all levels. And that's why photographers and people wanted to shoot with her. And that's why her career shot up past everyone else's.
And I have been booked on jobs by people who have said, I remember being an assistant on this job and you made me a cup of tea. And so it is business sense, but you know what? Your day will just be nicer for getting on with everybody in that room. You'll just have a better day, and you're learning from people, especially it's such an amazing opportunity to learn from such a broad church of people, because it's people from all over the world, from all kinds of backgrounends, who are drawn to this kind of creative industry.
A skill as well. From makeup artists, you can learn about what they're doing and everything. Yeah, no, I think that's a really, a positive way of looking at anything. But you're right. There's so much when you're on for people who haven't ever been on a shoot, it's quite, in my job, I've had to do some things where I'm like, I've had makeup and people taking pictures of me, which is weird because I didn't sign up for that. I signed up to be a coach, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting when someone dresses you and they put makeup on and they have photographers and sound people. I find it quite fun. And I think for a lot of people, it's really exciting too. Are you still excited when you do a new shoot, or yeah?
Every single shoot I do, I'm nervous, I'm excited, I hope I'm going to be good enough, even when it's regulars.
What was your most fun shoot you've ever done?
I went to Wales for about 4 days, and it was an unpaid job, but it was a book, and I am on the cover. And it was 2 other models. There was a male model, a female model, and me. It was a photographer called Deanna Schooneman, who I think she's still working, and she's a little bit sort of Rankin-esque. He wrote the intro for the book. It's kind of sexy and fun, but not sexual. I do find quite a big change in the industry, coming back to what we were talking about before. Like, there's a lot more sexual imagery that has always gone on. Like Terry Richardson, Rankin, they've had long careers, but sometimes it can be a bit less playful, I guess, to how it used to feel. But it can be quite the Kardashian sort of effect. It can be quite a face-tuned kind of sexy, whereas this was a bit more raw. And you know what? We were just playing. Just 4 days of play, and this was not like a luxurious job. We were all staying in the same room in this quite cold shack in Wales. It was not kind of an opulent, high budget trip, but it was so much fun. And I look at those pictures and I remember every shoot I did. And I know when I was uncomfortable in myself or uncomfortable on the job, and I just look at those, I know how happy I was.
Cool. That's good. Let me ask the other way. Have you had shoots which were just like a disaster?
Yeah, lots of different shoots that were disasters in different ways. So I did a hair shoot once, and I had really long hair. I now have a bob. It's very, very thick. And he curled it so minutely, and it was so bad. And I've got a fringe as well. So he curled the fringe, and it did not look good. And he cried, like the hairstylist cried. So I had to model. When you model, no matter what you look like, you've got to model like you're the most beautiful person in the universe in that moment. And when someone's looking at you and crying, it's quite hard to have much confidence. I did a Boots commercial, which it wasn't a disaster, but there was just a very hard scene. It was amazing. It was so much fun. There was a horse. There was so many props.
Yeah.
And you would think, oh my God, amazing. Like we walked in it and it was incredible. It was like this mountain of feathers up to about my stomach. And we had to play in it. But the very first second, one of the kind of the models they'd got from Romania, who was sort of in the background in a lot, he was quite a hyper guy. He literally threw a handful in my face because we were meant to be fake fighting with it, but it just meant feathers just went everywhere. And then we had to be throwing them around the room, and it was fun for a minute. And then we took a breath, and just so many feathers went into every orifice. About an hour of just this play fighting. So we'd play fight for about 5 minutes. They'd yell cut, and someone would come with bins, and we just have to retch into bins. And the makeup artist would come and just pick feathers out of my eyes, from like up my nose, from in between my teeth. And I developed a really big crush on one of the creative directors, and I just knew he was seeing like feathers being picked out of me in HD. And then after about an hour of that, I had to say a line, which I've never done for such a big job. And it's quite, makes you very nervous. And I was the first one to do it. And there's hundreds of people watching. There's hundreds of people every time they say an action. And I had 3 actions, and then I had to say my line, and then I had to turn around and look in a particular direction. And I just kept slightly messing up the line. And then I was just full of feathers. I was just coughing so much. And I look like I'm having so much fun in that advert.
Yeah, the advert's a great advert, and you nail it. I was so happy when I saw it. I was like, I know her, because it's so sassy and cool and funny. It's a really good advert.
I had fun by the end, and I feel like if I had a line now, I wouldn't have fun. I just learned to just play and have fun. And for anyone listening, if you ever get a line, don't worry about how it sounds. Just say it just have fun with it. Just say it like you're saying it to your best friend.
It is funny because, acting and modeling are different careers, and there's this weird crossover with adverts where you have to kind of act.
Oh, absolutely. And with modeling, no one takes you on an acting course. With acting, people might teach you how to act on camera and to learn your angles. With modeling, it's like, okay, go say a line for this huge major brand for this advert and carry on having a massive crush on this guy and get it wrong. But I actually think one of the worst modeling experiences for me was in the Caribbean. So in the old days, you used to get these trips that were like 2 weeks long to these incredible places. You'd get paid, you'd get weather days, you'd get free days. Now you go to Canberra Sands, or you go somewhere less exotic, but it's for 2 days and you shoot 5 stories. And you would think it would be amazing, but it was also in the days where people just smoked everywhere. So it was with a Swedish team, and they smoked non-stop, and they spoke in Swedish the whole time. And this was in the days before you'd maybe FaceTime your mum, or go on Instagram and do some fun Insta stories, or feel like, okay, well, I'll share this with people on Instagram, like, look where I am.
Yeah.
I was just there on my own, breathing in like a team of 10 people's smoke, listening to Swedish. I got so lonely on this 2-week job. And then there was a day that was quite cold and rainy as well. Most of it was beautiful, but I had to wear stilettos and stand on this cliff edge and look down at the camera. And he was down at the bottom of the cliff thing. And I felt so scared that I was going to fall and die. And I was so imbalanced in my heels, and it was quite windy. And I remember like little silent tears coming out of my eyes, because I had just spent this whole time being bitten by horseflies and listening to Swedish and breathing in cigarette smoke. And then I was like, this is how I die. But that is the reality of modeling. It can be incredible. And now people would be on Instagram like, I'm in the Caribbean, I'm living this life. But the reality is often that you're this teenager completely on their own sometimes, and really out of their depth.
I also think it's good for people listening to remember when they are looking at models who are on, they look like having the time of their life on a shoot. Quite often I'm talking to them on the phone afterwards, and they're not. They're unhappy. They're just for 10 seconds playing up to the camera.
Yeah, sometimes it is really great, but your call times are 3 a.m. and you're shooting till the night, and you're homesick. You know, sometimes it is bloody amazing. Sometimes this job is incredible, and what you're seeing is on Instagram is kind of every bit as amazing as it looks. But sometimes it's really hard, and you feel guilty for feeling that it's hard because, hello, I'm on the island where Johnny Depp was filming Pirates of the Caribbean, and I'm in this paradise, and I'm being paid, and I should be so happy, but I just miss my mum.
So what do you think so far in your career? What do you think modeling's taught you?
Oh, so much. I think it's really taught me who I am, which is really important because I really wanted to be cool, and I really wanted to be skinny, and I really wanted to put on outfits and go to castings and look like other models seem to, but I always just seem to feel nerdy, and my outfits never looked as cool as everybody else, and I couldn't quite. It's funny, like my body is now basically exactly the measurements it should have been because I don't care anymore, and all I do is dance and do like easy yoga. But I just spent so long feeling like I didn't fit in, and now I realize pretty much everyone feels like that, and actually that has been my strength. Maybe I didn't become the next Kate Moss, and I'm not like a style icon, but I have so many regular clients and friends who I made at the start of my career. Like, I've known some people for 20 years and they're my friends, and it's because I was always just myself, and I was a little bit nerdy.
No, but that is cool. The coolest thing is knowing who you are. The uncoolest thing is pretending to be something you're not, which a lot of people in their early 20s do. We go through a stage where we're trying to be something else. That's not cool. Being cool and also sexy is just owning it, whatever that may be. If it's going to bed at 8 o'clock at night, or drinking loads, or not drinking at all, it doesn't matter. It's just like being authentic and not apologizing for who you are. That's cool.
It's also taught me that modeling is a valid job. I think a lot of models feel like we're doing dress up and it's our Cinderella moment and we're fed this story, but we also have so much shame when people say, oh, what do you do? And we say, oh, I'm a model. And it's like, I know, I like didn't fit in at school, or I know I don't look like one, or they say, oh, what jobs do you do? And I'm thinking, well, I'm not shooting Vogue and campaigns. I'm kind of maybe a little bit more commercial, but it's such a valid job. Like, I've done it for this long. That's incredible. And then finally, the thing I've learned is the power of kindness. You know, in this job, there's a lot of people who seem to do very well and they're huge egos, or they're bossy, or they're quite cruel to other people, but they don't ever last for very long. Whereas I know so many clients, stylists, bookers, other models who are just really kind and generous, and they're the ones that stick around. And it's the same in kind of every industry.
Yeah.
You don't have to compete with other people.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's completely true of every industry, you know. Let's talk about fashion a little bit, something I know nothing about, something you know lots about. How has your fashion evolved since your goth Camden Market phase?
It's funny. It's been through a lot of phases, and I'm proud of the fact that I really went there with every single phase I had. I went to the nth degree. But when I got scouted, it's funny because it's fashionable now, but I used to wear like fleeces and baggy jeans. I have 2 older brothers. I really liked indie music, and I just dressed in a lot of their clothes, or I'd wear little belly tops and baggy trousers. Then I joined Select, and they said, you know, you've really got to change the way you dress. But so they had a vision.
Mid-90s, late 90s? Oh, no, 2000.
No,
later,
2001 was when I was scouted. Then around 2003-ish, I think Select were like, you need to dress differently and present yourself differently, because they had a vision, which is great.
Yeah.
And my booker at the time, Sarah Leon, I even went round her house and she gave me loads of hand-me-downs. So I had all these cool clothes, but I didn't feel like they were me. But I just wore those. I was like, okay, someone said these are cool. And then in my 20s, just floundering around, trying to find my identity, I was very unhappy in my body. So I always wore like baggy-ish clothes to try and hide my hips. but always bright colours, to the like probably detriment of my career, but definitely to the despair of my bookers. And then I had this boyfriend, and I got very influenced by him and his mum, and I started wearing like plainer clothes, which in a way was a couple of years of being quite free, because it was like, I'm not thinking, I'm not trying anymore.
Yeah.
For a film by, I think her name is Iris Apfel. It was about this woman who's in her 80s and she dresses really flamboyantly. And I felt so sad, because I thought, oh, I've lost that fun with dressing. So I've gone back to kind of that grungy teen in a way. It's always DMs. I love vintage kilts. I'm always in a tight black polo neck because I'm always cold. And I wouldn't say I have any idea about trends, but I just really love vintage clothes. I really like Victorian era, the 60s and the 90s. And I'm just stuck with that. I think that I will be in DMs and a black polo neck and some kind of kilt, or dungarees till I'm 80.
So let me ask you advice, because I stumbled across a GQ article which horrified me about a week ago, and it was like 10 faux pas men over 40 should never do. And I literally did 6 of them regularly in terms of fashion faux pas. Is there such a thing for, like, in my mid 40s, are there some things I should never do?
I think the ultimate fashion faux pas is to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
You're a man who knows what he likes to wear.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean I make good choices.
You know what you like to wear and you're always comfortable in it and you own it.
Yeah, but
which is a lot better than someone who's like, right, I've learned I should only wear these clothes, and then you're feeling with fashion. I am no fashionista in that most of my clothes are quite old or vintage, but just wear weather appropriate clothing that makes you feel good. So maybe we'll do an alternative article.
All right, I'd like to talk a little bit about mental health, a bit more about that, because I know with Model Typeface, which is your blog, which is really good, really, really good. Has your thinking about mental health and mental well-being changed in recent years? And has that affected your?
Well, I've always spoken about it, and I've always been really honest. I just think there's more of a conversation about it, and I understand the terms now. You know, I understand more about what anxiety is, what depression is, even things like gaslighting and being a people pleaser or being passive. Like, I'm much more aware of my interactions with people and the roles that we play. But I've always been quite honest about things like money or when I'm not happy, because I do understand why people don't talk about these things. But at the same time, I think the more that you're like, I'm feeling really sad today for no reason, or I'm feeling really sad because I haven't had a booking in a month, or I'm really worried because I've only been paid £600 in the last 3 months. I just feel like as soon as you're honest about these things, other people respond to that really well. And I have found that with Model Typeface. You know, when I've spoken about experiences or I've done interviews with other people, people go, oh my God, that happened to me, or I thought it was only me.
All right, so I want to ask more about for young models listening, because you've already shared quite a lot of advice, and I think what was really helpful is to get different sources of information. Like when I work with models, I try and sort of act like a big brother in a way, and I know you act like a big sister. And Leanne Maskell, her fantastic book, Model Manifesto, helpful. What other resources do you feel is out there right now to help young models?
I think Instagram is often quite a good place because people talk about their experiences.
So to follow other models?
Yeah, see what other models are saying. Because say, if you followed the Model Manifesto Instagram, for example, she shares things from other model accounts. Do you know what? I do think that the Model Manifesto and Model Typeface,
they're the best
they're
ones
the
I
best
know.
resources.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really done it for any other reason other than wanting to help people. I don't have any end goal in mind of, I want to make money from doing this, or I want to get sponsorship from doing this. It's genuinely just, I had a lot of experiences to share, and I know Leanne's, it was like an urge to write that book that she just followed through, and I'd say that because Leanne speaks about her experiences with mental health as well as the legal side of things. And I just say with model typeface, like you can just put in the search bit what you're looking for, and I've probably written an article about it. So I know that's really sort of arrogant to say, but I would say me and my best friend's resource.
I tell everyone to, I mean, I've got Leanne's book, you know, and I always recommend people go to your website. But do you think there's a slight issue of critiquing the model industry too much if you're working as a model, where you kind of bite the hand that feeds it? Is there an issue there, or should you be completely honest if something's not right? Or do you have to be a little bit careful?
So I would say I tread the line with model typeface because I love modeling. I just have seen a lot of bad things go on, and it would be remiss of me not to talk about that side of things. And Leanne speaks quite stridently. She's not modeling anymore. So,
but it's easier when you're not modeling anymore. It's easier to critique it. That's why I actually quite like the fact that you're still a model and you love it. Because I don't see many people who are in the industry and actually saying, yes, it's good and bad. That's why you come across.
I would say that it depends on how you do it, because there's a difference between me writing an article about why I hate modeling and why everything is rubbish and then going to a job, and me saying, look, if you're going to do jobs, these are the great things about it, but these are some things to look out for. So it's not whether you're doing it, it's just how.
Let me ask you about that, actually. It's a couple of questions. How do you think you should foster a positive relationship with an agent?
I think firstly, speaking to your booker, you know, when you send them an email, just say, hi, how are you? I have this question. Hope you're having a great day. Warm regards, Rebecca. So much better than, hi, is this option happening? Your name. Just so they think of you and they think, oh, that's a nice person. Turning up to on your side of things, you should be turning up to your casting, every single casting. And if you're not, you should be telling them. You should be turning up to your jobs and doing the best you can do and being on time. And as I said, clean, presentable, energetic. And on their side, they should be getting you work, and you should feel open to being able to have a conversation with them. We actually did a podcast on the Model Manifesto with a booker.
I listened to that. She said, fantastic.
Yeah, it was so good. And it was so good to hear, because she was saying, we want to get you work. We want to work with you, but don't WhatsApp me on the weekend with a question or with your worries. Send me an email saying, hi, I would love to come in and speak to you about this issue I'm having. This is what I'd like to speak about. Is there a time this week that I could come in and we could have a discussion? And then you're both ready for the conversation you're going to have, and you've respected their time, and they're seeing you as someone who's a professional who wants to work.
Yeah.
And then being really happy when you get jobs. You know, I've done some really fun jobs this year, and I tell my booker, this was such a good day. Here's a couple of pictures from the job. Here's me with a horse. And I think, you know, you don't want to hound them. I am aware that they get a lot of emails in a day, but I think they really appreciate when you appreciate getting work. And for all the things I write on Model Typeface about our rights and fighting for things, I do also appreciate that being a booker is a really hard job, and I have done work experience in it. And it's really hard. Models just don't turn up to castings, or they say, oh, I can't do that job, I'm doing this, but they haven't booked out, or they don't always realize that's a lot of money to get for one day's work. Maybe your boyfriend's birthday is not as important. So, you know, we have our part to play as well.
Yeah, I think it goes back to empathy, doesn't it? If you actually think about the bookers also. I mean, I'm friends with bookers, models, and also agents and people who run model agencies. And I hear they're bitching about other people, and I hear their successes, and everyone has their issues, and everyone has their kind of rights, you know. So I think if you put yourself in the shoes of the other people, and also the clients.
Yeah.
Clients are businesses which want to make money, so they have certain things which they will work. So then you have a better understanding. You don't feel that things are unfair.
Yeah, and we are paying 25%. It's a lot. So, you know, it's fair that we want to know that people are on our side. and working for us, and also that we don't have to send in cakes or be fawning or be worried about saying our fears, because that is part of what bookers are there to do, like to work for us and to listen to our worries about our work and where we'd like to go. But at the same time, it's just go about it in a way that doesn't put their back up, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we've given a lot of advice to models, and there is quite a bit of information about models, but there's not much advice out there for bookers and agents.
So true.
And the vast majority of agents, bookers I know, they do some things wrong. They often over-exaggerate, like you said about the job. They'll over-exaggerate how successful you'll be in your career, how everyone loves you. And they kind of, because it's easy to give someone a compliment and feel good, but they realize that if you just do that and people don't get that job, you're actually worsening their self-esteem. So I think a bit of an understanding of psychology and a little bit more kind of like motherly rather than excited kind of best friend is a better approach.
It's weird though, because you can't make someone be motherly. That's like a disposition. You know, I'd be a terrible booker because I just cry all the time, and I just never want to tell anyone like anything bad. You probably need a balance, because you need some people who are going to get the clients and get the money, but there could perhaps be more guidelines. And I think bookers would probably benefit. Like, this is how you talk to someone about weight. This is a fact sheet that is universal to all agents. You know, the way that people go about things could be better, but it's because bookers come from all walks of life, and it's a weird job. It's
very
sales.
odd job, isn't it?
It's sales of young people.
Yes, of young women. It's a very odd job, actually.
I think it must be quite damaging for bookers sometimes.
Yeah, I know a few bookers, and they're quite, the ones I know are kind of like, they haven't lasted that long. They last like 5 years because they get burnt out because they're out partying with the models and having that weird relationship where they're friends with the models, but also they work for the agent, and it's a tricky job. I think you can be.
Yeah, when I was 16, I thought bookers were the coolest people in the world. You know, these people had plucked me from Lower Morden and were sending me to jobs where I was getting paid this much money, or I was getting made up to look like an adult, sexy woman in heels that I couldn't actually walk in. And, you know, I was posing like an aristocrat and stuff. And bookers seemed so much fun. And they were genuinely like big brothers and sisters that I wanted to impress. It was so important to me that they thought I was cool and easygoing. And then, of course, you get older and it's more of a professional relationship, but there is like a strange blurring of boundaries sometimes. And it must be great to be a booker and know that these people think you're so cool, but it must also be really hard in lots of different ways. Either you become a bit distanced and detached from the fact that you're looking after teenagers who you don't know what backgrounds they're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's either you become detached or you become maybe like too involved. You know, a lot of people end up with quite parental kind of relationships I've seen. It's a strange area of the industry. And I'd say any advice to models is like, just remember it's a professional relationship, because these people who are your cool older brothers and sisters actually might just drop you tomorrow because you're not making enough money or you're not working.
And how about the other way around? What's the best way of finishing a relationship with an agency? What's the most professional way of doing it?
Definitely don't do what I did when I left Premier to Select, which is just get poached by another booker and let them deal with it. It's generally, as I said, what I've learned as well from the podcast we did with the booker, to send an email and to say, hi, is it possible we could have a chat? Can you give me a time to come into the agency? And then saying, you know, this doesn't feel like it's working. I don't know how you feel about that. Remember that you have often in your contract this gardening leave thing where you have to stay at that agency for a certain amount of time. So as much as it pains me to say it, you might want to do it as gently as possible in case they enforce that, because you want them to still get you work.
First, makes sense. I know some of the models have
read the Model Manifesto.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn about contracts. And then sometimes they say, okay, well, we don't want to lose you. This has happened to my friend recently. We don't want to lose you. We're going to work really hard for you. And then sometimes it's neutral. But it's just better, as scary as it is, it's so scary. But just remember, there are so many models. You're just one of so many models. In that moment, it's good to remember, just to kind of lessen the pain. Otherwise, just remember you're very special and you're great. But just remember, like, this is a working relationship, and if neither of you are working, they're often going to say, like, yeah, maybe you do better somewhere else. Sometimes they help you.
Yeah. All right, let's finish off with some questions. I want to get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
Because, like I said, I think you're a friend, but I don't know you that well. Because we've never had a beer. We've never met face to face, only through podcasts and from various WhatsApp calls. So this is for me, really. Favorite book? Quick answer.
Oh,
Let's go. What?
East of Eden
East of Eden
by John Steinbeck. Yeah.
Right. Favorite film?
Sister Act 2.
Really?
Absolutely true. I said that in a casting once, and I was like, all their faces, all these cultural, like, cool ad guys were just like, oh. True though, brilliant film.
Favorite TV show on at the moment?
Oh, I don't know what's on. Gardener's World.
Okay, of course. Okay. Favorite model working today?
Erin O'Connor.
Oh yeah, she's stunning.
So incredible.
Very
Because
striking.
she cares tip to toe about that image.
Yeah. Good. Favorite band?
I don't think I can answer that. I'm so sorry.
Um,
It just changes minute to minute.
give me give me a favorite album. One of your favorite albums.
The Stone Roses. One of my favorite albums. Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know, my mind has gone so blank with any music that ever existed.
Roses and David Bowie. I mean, you did well.
But the reason I said the Stone Roses is because we were reliving my teenage past, and I was obsessed with the Stone Roses. I went to a Stone Roses tribute band when I was 16, and it was genuinely one of the best gigs of my life. I was so happy.
What was was that the first gig you ever went to in your life?
No, the first gig I ever went to was The Who with my dad, and Joe Strummer supported. Oh, London Calling by the Clash.
Oh.
They're one of my faves. Yeah.
Amazing. My first concert was Suede, and
Wow.
Placebo opened for them.
Oh my God, I've been listening to a lot of Placebo and Suede recently. Isn't that funny? I love Animal Nitrate, and I love Nancy Boy.
Yeah, fantastic. I know my musical taste hasn't really changed, because I think what music we loved in, like, when we were like 16 to 20 kind of stays with us. So, you know, I'm from Manchester, and, like, you know, Charlatans and Stone Roses and Oasis.
I saw the Charlatans. Can I quickly interrupt and say, they did this secret gig at the Astoria. Again, I think I was about 16. It was a tiny gig, and they sold tickets on the day, and me and my friend queued up, and we had ticket 1 and 2. And I was centre front, right in front of Tim Burgess, who was on the front of my school folder. I had such a huge crush on him. Another just transcendental gig for me.
I think because I can't have you in any higher esteem now I know your musical taste, on there before this downhill.
We went up from Sister Act 2.
I've forgotten that. I'll move that off to the side. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Rebecca. Really nice chatting to you, and I'm sure people listening will appreciate your advice regarding modeling and just living. I think it transcends the modeling industry. Your advice is just basically how to be a good person. So it's it's very sweet, and you're lovely. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I love what you do. I love what you put out.
Hey, so thank you, Rebecca. It was nice. I'm doing this little outro like 4 weeks after I filmed that, and it's nice to revisit and listen to it again, because Rebecca gives some really good advice. And I think if you're a young model, she's a great role model for you to follow. Now, outside of Rebecca, who you can follow at Rebecca Pearson, and also check out her blog, which is full of great articles and tips, which is modeltypeface.com. Aside from that, please check out her friend Leanne's book, The Model Manifesto. It's a really good guide to help you navigate through the industry and to not get exploited and to look after yourself. Like any industry, modeling can be tough, and the more information you have, the more knowledge and worldliness you have, the more you can navigate through it and not get hurt. Now, on top of the book, Rebecca and Leanne co-host the Model Manifesto podcast. And it's really good. We talked about one of the episodes where they had a booker on, but it's a really good podcast and you check it out. Now, just to go on a bit of a tangent, I was actually a guest of theirs a few months ago now, and I talked about Methodology X. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast and don't know what MX is, MX stands for Methodology X. Very briefly, the reason why I think Leanne asked me on is because the MX workout is very popular internationally among models, among the fashion industry. A lot of agents recommend it. A lot of famous models champion it, like Elle and Vogue and Tatler write about it. And the reason I think it is popular is two things. One, it gets results, particularly if you want a lean, kind of like Victoria's Secret Sports Illustrated look. And it definitely comes off my experience training girls to get those kind of gigs. However, I think it was just about getting a good looking body. It wouldn't have been sort of embraced so well. I think it's because really infused and really the heart of MX is the mental health and the relationship you have with your body. See, I think everyone really is an athlete, and the more we see ourselves as an athlete and think and perform and act like an athlete, the better relationship we have with our body and also with food and exercise we have. Now, the trick onto creating a program which gets a very specific look and gets very, it's very specific in terms of you don't get abs, but you get obliques. You don't get too muscular. You get lean. It works on posture. You get strong, but not bulky. It really sort of, even though now a lot of women buy it, it does have the model physique in mind. And the reason it gets those kind of results, while also doesn't focus on the results, is, sorry, I'm losing my mind, but I'm trying to explain, is that I created a program which focused very much on athletic performance. So you get stronger, you get more powerful, you learn how to do these complex moves, a lot of like dance and ballet and Pilates stuff in there. And I don't really talk about looks in the program at all. However, because I've chosen certain exercises, I know the side benefit of doing certain Pilates or dance or yoga moves will get a certain look. So you get the look without getting the obsession. I know that I should have really planned what I'm going to say, but does that make sense? But that's what Methodology X does. The MX brand, the MX workout, be it the classes, which are all over the world, or the online members club, which have got thousands of members. I think that's why it's been embraced and why it's relatively a successful workout, as workouts go. So, yeah, I've lost my train of thought. But anyway, going back to this, yeah, that's what it is. Buy this book. It's great. Check out their podcast. And follow Rebecca. Like I said, she's a great role model for the fashion industry. Not many models have lasted 20 years, not just lasted. She's done really well, consistently working for 20 years. That's a huge success in a really tough industry. So you can learn a lot from her. All right, so I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the MX podcast. All feedback, reviews, and social shares are very much appreciated.